You know, one thing that I don't dwell on in the chapter, maybe because it seems so obvious to me and to many, is the environment is a mess in China. It's awful. They have severe water problems and severe air problems and severe noise problems, soil problems, everything. It's a place whose agriculture was highly dedicated to massive uses of chemicals and pesticides, whose industry was dedicated to production at any environmental cost, and they're paying a price right now, a really high price. But one result of that is people are starting to care much more. People locally who will sometimes now act to protect their local environment, but also nationally, the government has actually done quite a bit, especially in cities, ending burning of coal, for instance, which has made an enormous difference in local environmental quality. And that, because that's not a religious fact, I suppose I don't dwell on it in the chapter, but it's important background to understand why would people start to think about the environment at all at this time. There is a fair amount of reconsideration of stances on the environment from most of the religious traditions in China, as there is in most places around the world right now. So for Christianity, for instance, there have been several statements, both from Taiwanese Christians and Chinese Christians and Hong Kong Christians, about the environment, largely consistent with what worldwide Christianity, I think, had been talking about first. So, you know, the Bible is a long and complicated document. You can get a lot out of it, including a lot of quite anti-environmental stuff, and that certainly the founding fathers of the United States, the Puritans, had a very unenvironmentalist view of the environment, that wilderness was satanic and it was our duty to be fruitful and multiply, and it was our right to take the land from the native populations because they weren't being fruitful and multiplying as quickly as you could on that land, and we should chop down the forest and make farms. And, you know, this was our duty to God. Well, Christians have a different view of it now. These traditions are always being rethought and reworked by people. More significant in the Chinese context, I think, has been a Buddhist rethinking of these issues, especially out of the large Taiwanese Buddhist groups, many of which have been at the forefront of environmental action, beginning in Taiwan, but they've globalized a bit in China, although they're not supposed to organize separate branches in China. They're still influential there, and certainly everywhere else in the world. So the first effective recycling in Taiwan, for instance, was sponsored by the Buddhists. A general Buddhist ideal of living simply as a way of not grasping onto the world and therefore not having to be reincarnated eventually. But that can translate into an environmental message, which has been important. And the Bodhisattva ideal, the ideal that before becoming a Buddha, I'm going to dedicate myself to saving every other sentient being, translates fairly easily into an environmental ethic where I'm responsible for everyone else living a proper kind of a life, and including I'm responsible for the rights of animals. So vegetarianism is a kind of obvious thing, and an environmentally important thing, since it's so much uses so much fewer resources to raise grain than to raise the grain and then feed it to the cow.